Hello everybody and welcome back to our channel. Today we're going to be discussing Cardano again. It's back in the news. We're going to see if it can actually fall and crash and burn below 60 cents. Welcome again to our channel. Subscribe, drop a comment, and hammer on that like button. So looking at Cardano, we've discussed this before and we're going to discuss it again because right now it is making some pretty big panics, of course, throughout the market, right? So as we're looking for Cardano, it's sitting now at about $1.91. It's still struggling to break that $2 mark. And that's not good. So the longer that we're actually hanging out and we're kind of just watching into this, if it still doesn't break that $2 mark and we're kind of staying in that range, it's going to get worse and worse and worse. All right, so these bleeding candles, it's just hemorrhaging nonstop. People are still not making anything. And you can look, looking at here at our graph, at our charts, you can see that even from September, it's been going sideways nonstop, up and down, but honestly, like just a array of red, which is very, very sad. Now, of course, kind of giving it in, like yesterday, of course, it was doing pretty good. This is on the day market. So this is what we see. So today it's like, hopefully going to break in, right? But it's still not quite there as we sit. And so we're going to watch. So it does show that it could potentially go back up maybe, but it's still kind of bouncing on the line of resistance here. And that's what we're going to watch for. Because necessarily if this doesn't kind of come back up, if it doesn't break past this, then it's just going to decline and decline and decline. And so still looking very, very bearish, but still too close to fully call. And that's what we're looking at the moment, right? So the last, and you can see if we look here, back here on the daily chart still, looking here in July, we kind of had that same pattern, which it dipped well at $1. So it was pretty bad here after that sideways move at that rally that we had. So it kind of looks a little familiar when we're looking. Except it did have the more red ranging from July up until end of July, so we did have that. Now, if we're speaking about from September right up until the end of October, it still looks better, but it's not what we need. It's not what we want, right? So keep an eye on that, but I would expect it to continue to fall as long as you're hanging out on this line of support. All right, looking for the daily, the weekly. Here we go, and we're going to let it load in one moment. Now we're looking at the weekly. It's still very, very bad. Of course, when we're looking at the daily, you kind of have some kind of hope. Still not great, right? It's still not what we want here. So it's still bleeding, coming out. In the monthly, it did close. So let's look at the monthly. Still very, very bad. Just absolutely horrendous. So looking at it, not very good. It didn't even break up or make up for that last in October here. It just did not do it. Or even in September, it just could not manage to recover. So as long as we're still hanging out in this area, expect bad things for Cardano. Moving on. Speaking about Bitcoin, Bitcoin is still kind of starting. Well, Bitcoin is still doing its thing after reaching an all-time high. We didn't really have that candle that we wanted after breaking that all-time, which that's really what you want. Once you kind of reach that all-time, you do want to see it actually start to skyrocket here. But unfortunately, it did. It took a little dip. It took a little dive. I guess it decided it wanted to go swimming. But unfortunately, it is moving sideways looking at the daily. Bitcoin is still a very powerful coin. Hold on to your horses, but hanging out here around 61,000 and 61 and a half. I'm still going to call it could potentially dip if it doesn't come out of here. And this is what's dangerous. We still can't quite call it. So it could go up. And if it goes up, great, right? If it goes up, fantastic. Of course, everybody wants 100,000 Bitcoin, right? But if it goes down, I would expect between 54 and 55. It's a very, very dangerous moment. So as it continues to go sideways, it puts everybody on their seats, right? So for those of you that don't quite know, people are telling you to hold on, but these people, and I repeated this over and over and over, but these same people could potentially change your minds because the longer it stays sideways, it creates that tension that we don't necessarily want, right? So these people that are holding on could eventually just decide to bail out and, of course, make it plummet. And that's what we see. But, of course, too early to call as well. That is looking at the daily. Let's look at the weekly. Now, the weekly for Bitcoin, of course, is still not the greatest here. Still kind of moving out. Closing in at 61.5, of course, still. So we'll take a look. So the last time we really had that good pump too was back here in February. We had that same kind of pump. You can see almost identical. So when we had this little movement here, it's pretty identical to this when we're speaking on Bitcoin. So we'll keep an eye on here. Potentially it could be really good, but we also in May had a plummet in this one, right? So these two patterns here is what I'm speaking about. So we had that sideways movement in the past couple of ways. You can see kind of the same thing, that sideways movement, and that's what we have. So if we're comparing the two, that upward trend, the same, if the patterns are going to hold up, this is what we're going to have with that same sideways movement, and then it could eventually just kind of fall off, right? It did make up here in April. It did make up for itself, this candle, but back in May, so it did make up for that, just barely, right, and reach, but it did fall. And that's kind of what we're looking at to the same. Even when we're talking about here at the top of the pattern as the sideways goes, even after breaking that high right here, so even here, it looks very familiar, right? So that's what we want to watch for, right? So even here and here, so it's showing that pattern that it could potentially plummet. So for me, it looks very, very bearish. So I would keep an eye out, but again, too close to call us that as well. So closing on for the monthly as well for Bitcoin. Bitcoin is still like doing its thing, but again, rather familiar. So the number one news, it did break the all-time high, but we're not seeing any more movement forward on that, and that's what makes me a little bit nervous. Speaking about Ethereum, Ethereum doing this thing too. Ethereum is still doing pretty good. We had that nice little boost here coming from the daily. So back from the September up, it's still completely climbing. It has a little sideways movement too, but it is showing a little bullish behavior too. So the last time you see we had back in September, it was kind of like banging out, right? A little bit worried, but altogether, gaming altcoins in itself are starting to do rather well. And so we'll take a look. Now, Solana is very, very close to actually flipping Cardano. And we're going to look in that in just a moment. But looking at Solana, it looks pretty good as well. Here, looking at the daily. When we're speaking about Solana, coming back from August up until September, man, it really had a fantastic rally. It took a little bit of a dip in September, a little bit of and some sideways behavior still. But still actually climbing off of support. So still doing fantastic. And it's still climbing even to this day. Looking at the weekly for Solana, it's still doing fantastic. If you're looking at it and to compare for the rest of the coins, man, Solana is killing it. I mean, absolutely killing it when we look at it. It has that sideways behavior too, but it's still climbing, right? So beautiful, beautiful green candles, and that's what we want to see. Looking at for the monthly, even better. It's still closing out very, very high, and today it's at 202.78, and it's still fantastic. When you compare from April and May, man, it's just like completely slaying it. Like nothing will get in Solana's way. So we're gonna take a look a little bit later, and you're gonna see. I really believe it's continuing to rally, looking very, very bullish right now. So we're gonna be able to call that a little bit later too. So fantastic, absolutely beautiful. All right, so of course Bitcoin is closing in for the 24-hour percent in the red, 99, just barely 1%. For the weekly, it is in the red, 2.13%. So that's what we have there. Ethereum, of course, is doing fantastic. Even for the 7-day, we have 3.23%, and for the day at 0.73, still early in the day. When we're speaking about Cardano, of course, for the weekly, minus 10%, very, very ugly. And we have it as well as 163 for the past 24 hours. XRP has been doing pretty great as well. For the weekly, it did go at 2.59%. and 0.58% for the daily. Shiba still killing it as well. For the weekly, still at 68.51%, and for the daily, 0.86, which is very surprising for me. I'm still in shock. So keeping an eye on that as well. So just seeing that Shiba is actually making the top 10 is like beyond my mental capacity to understand. Polkadot's still doing fantastic as well. Polkadot is up 10% for the week and 11% for the day. Still killing it. These gaming coins, guys, they're really doing really good right now. So keep a close eye on those, because I think we're really going to take in some big market here. Even Binance coin, I mean, 10.82% and 195 for the day. Tether, even, all of them are looking great. The market looks pretty good right now, especially for the top 10. Doge, not so hot, but it is doing its thing too. So keep a close eye on those, right? They have a lot. Polygon, even for the week, is at 5.24%. Really good. Like Polygon Matic is, I would expect it to do fantastic as well. Axel Infinity, another gaming coin at 3.65% and 2.64% for the day. Guys, I'm telling you, they're doing it good. They're doing it really good. All right, guys, thank you for joining. Don't forget to subscribe, drop a comment, and hammer on the like button. Click the bell to get all the next news that I can give you. Thank you again, and I will catch you on the flip side.